everyone, this is Mia von Loga and this is another episode of Different Lives. I'm in Portland, Oregon right now, standing in front of the house of my next feature, and I'm absolutely excited and feeling quite, warm to bring you this story, to meet this wonderful being and his family. It is a multi-dimensional, transformational, life-bringing life story. And yeah, this is Different Lives. I'm bringing you real stories, uplifting, authentic, different, inspiring. And you guys, subscribe because it's worth it and you like it. And these stories are real and they are unique, and because you can get a gift too. Come on, let's go and meet Trystan. All right, let's go in. So I'm in Portland now.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you. Trystan.
Yeah.
Why do you think I asked you to be a feature for Different Lives? I mean, what could that be?
I mean, I think that I am one of the many people who really sort of have looked at the rule book that we're all given, and I was like, this doesn't really work for me. And kind of, I won't say like threw it out, but kind of like tore some pages out and threw those away, including, what was expected of me based on the gender that I was born, including what was expected of me as a transgender person, including what was expected of me in terms of building a family, what was expected of me in terms of finding love. I was given a playbook. I was told messages in many different ways throughout my life, most of which I was like, that doesn't work for me, and I don't see it working for other people either. So I assume that you try to find people who live their lives in that way, who really try to figure out new ways of being.
Yes.
And so that's sort of where I am and who I am.
Yes,
so.
you're all about it, absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, I assume that's why. You might have asked me, but I don't know. You tell me.
Actually, it was Portland. Oh.
You just wanted a chance to come here.
Yeah,
I get
totally.
that. Portland's pretty.
No, totally. No, I really like the way you described it, and it pretty much describes the whole thing of playbook. It's good. So ripping out pages, but also writing new ones. Right?
That's right.
They're always blank pages, and we can fill them.
Yeah.
And I only know this little part of you because I don't know you really. Come on, let's be honest. So even though you share a lot, who am I to know you? I'm not. So I would love to hear more, and I'm pretty sure that one of the aspects you would probably talk about, and it's not the only thing that you have discovered. Like you just said, it started obviously very early on. Yeah. That you discover, hey, I like to phrase it like this now: people around me are different. In the beginning, it's like, I'm different from others, but maybe it's just that they are different from you. So, when have you realized that? When
I am profoundly lucky in that I have really amazing parents.
Wonderful.
And you wouldn't, they're like, they don't appear to be different in any way. You know what I mean? They're not odd or eccentric or artistic or they're not hippies. You know what I mean? My dad's a doctor. My mother was a physical therapist. They're very they seem very middle America, although they're Canadian. But I can remember being, I think 9 years old and in 3rd or 4th grade. And I had read a book about how kids could save the world. And I was very excited about this because as a kid, you don't feel like you have much power. So to read a book that's like, actually, here are concrete steps you can take to make a real change at 9 or 10, that was like a revelation for me. It wasn't just my own little tiny universe in my house or maybe my school, but that it could ripple out. And one of the concrete steps is they had an essay by Alice Walker about vegetarianism, about how important it is to really think about what you put in your body and the choices you make. And I was like, this is great. I'm going to be vegetarian. And
being 9 years old.
Yeah, that's right. I was a strange child. But most...
Different, I'd say.
That's right. Many vegetarians that I know, especially people who chose vegetarianism as children, their parents were judgmental, resistant. When you make a choice like that, a lot of people see it as a judgment on them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
They're not like, oh, cool, you're making a choice.
Totally.
They're like, no, you're judging my choice. You're saying that I.
Oh, yeah.
And they get so
get all these
defensive.
comments, right?
So much. But my parents were the complete opposite. Complete opposite. So my mom said, oh, it's really great that you're a kid and you're willing to make a sacrifice for something you believe in. Whatever you need, I'll support you. So she started cooking all vegetarian for the whole house, even though I was the only vegetarian in the house. And early on, I remember like I would forget that I'm 9, I'm a kid. And so we would like go and I'd say, oh, I'll have the chicken bowl. And she'd say, oh, honey, I think you're vegetarian, right? I'm like, oh my God, you're right, Mom. I don't want chicken on the bowl. So she would really, not in a judgmental or shaming way, but just super, super supportive. And I've been vegetarian for 26 years, starting then. And I think those little ways that my parents taught me that my ideas mattered, my opinions mattered, even when they were bigger than the situation called for. I did arrange a school walkout on dissection when I was in elementary school, maybe middle school at that point in biology, like 7th grade biology or something. And my parents completely supported me. Most parents would be like, you're going to get kicked out of school, you're going to get an F. They were like, nope. Do it.
Love it.
Yeah. So early on, I sort of had this realization that either I was different or everyone else is different. I don't know why they don't care about animals being killed for our 7th grade biology class. They're different from me. But I felt really early on, I was sent the messages from them that my opinions mattered, my ideas mattered. And if the rules don't work for me, like eating meat or dissecting an animal, I can either make a small choice on my own to be different, or I can try to impact the world to be different, depending on what the situation is and everything. So,
yeah, but every little piece, actually is part of the whole. So if the bigger picture, even when you do it like tiny little change, individual choice, little choice, like, no, I don't want chicken on top of my meal, even that tiny bit, absolutely supports the whole bigger picture. So
yeah, and I still, it's a funny world we live in now where we can connect back to kids we were friends with in middle school. Now I'm like, I'm like Lacey Brown, whatever, who's in my, geometry class at age 13 found me on Facebook. And they still say, like, you were the first person that I knew who stood up for something you believed in. And that's 2 decades ago. More than that.
Yeah.
And so you're right. It really does ripple out. Yeah. But I'm really lucky that I had that sense of empowerment, I think, from an early age from my parents.
I think so too, yeah. Makes a huge difference.
It's so different. And even looking at now, we have 2 kids who were adopted out of a traumatic situation. And even as little as my son was 3 when we adopted him. And those early years of disempowerment have still had a profound impact on his sense of self.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. That was already so beautiful. No, seriously. And I find that totally amazing because I think sometimes grown-ups underestimate kids so much because they are whole people. Just because they're tiny and they're still developing, they are already complete. So having, that realism, don't underestimate kids because there's so much going on.
Big thoughts, big feelings.
Yes. And then you have that ripple effect, like you say, even if it's just like your classmate is one person, but you influence that person. Either it's like, hey, you were somebody who stood up, or maybe, hey, being a vegetarian is actually quite a good thing. Yeah. Or whatever, but you do. So, yeah. So did you have some challenges too? It's like when you say you had supportive what's wrong? You had supportive parents.
I mean, I have supportive children too, but
yeah, we come to that part later. I'm sorry. No, so did you have other experiences, the opposite experience?
Of course, yeah. I mean, I was I was bullied, and I don't know. I try to think about it a little bit more holistically. I also I was like a really easy person to pick on. Like I was a strange kid. I really was. I was very different. I was not good at looking at the other kids and seeing what they were doing and then doing that.
So you just followed your own thing.
I just followed my own thing and then was very disappointed when the other kids teased me about it. Okay. And we were in a very conservative small town. My parents had moved from Canada to a town in Southern California next to an Air Force base. So it was a lot of military, a lot of racism. I'll pause so you don't have to hear her little feet tapping. You can edit that part out. So it was a lot of racism, a lot of homophobia, a lot of sexism. It was just very conservative. And so, yeah, it was hard. Kids really hated me. I was really different from them. And really, I mean, luckily for me, I discovered theater early on. And so I found my own little community as a kid of adults who were, you know, interesting and interested in me and thought I was smart and having a passion and a love for something that really helped. I think it helped my parents too, my mom especially, that she could help me invest in something that where I felt happy. But I was profoundly miserable in school. Yeah, I was just so different.
How old were you then?
I started theater when I was 9, but I would say probably from age 9 on. I was just very, you know, just so different from the other kids, just so different. And, you know, looking back, like there was gender stuff happening, you know, I was a little girl. And that was, you know, weird. It was weird for me. It was weird for other kids. But also, you know, but I also loved dance. You know, I got to do dance when I was a kid, which was great. So I also didn't have the, like, I don't know, it's weird to think of it as a luxury, but like, I think if I had been more like other transgender people, early on I would have been like, oh, I'm a boy. I don't like any girl things. I like only boy things, but it was not that straightforward for me. I love dance. I love theater. I love singing. You know, I loved all those sort of like performance things, which are more traditionally associated with girls. Get it. And gay men, as it turns out. So it made more sense later on. But so I didn't.
It confused you probably, right?
Yeah. It just made my trajectory a little bit more murky, is all. Yeah. So yeah. And I got beat up quite a bit, and you know, yeah, all of those things.
Even when you were that young or
older?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, all the way
you
through
have siblings, right?
Middle school, high school. I have an older sister who's much older. Okay. And then I have a younger sister who's pretty close in age to me.
So there was no one to protect you or be standing at your side or anything like that?
No, I mean, my sister left home when I was 9, and so she wasn't really
no, of course not,
around, and I don't think that my parents really understood the American dynamics around bullying, and I think my mom saw that the kids who did well in school are the kids who do not do well in life. You know, if you're like the captain of the football team or you're like the prom queen, like that's your highlight. And maybe you're going to spend the rest of your life wishing that you were back there. So in her mind, it was kind of a good thing that I wasn't that popular in middle school and high school, because she was more interested in crafting me as a person, not as like a popular 12-year-old or whatever, which was really painful for me back then. And I do wish that some different choices were made, but you can't do that. That's a trap.
No. Yeah.
You know, every few months she'll call me on the phone and she'll say, well, do you think that I should have done this? I said, listen, it's done. I'm awesome.
I love that.
You know what I mean? You did a great job.
Yeah, exactly. No, oh my God. I mean,
you can't.
Just by supporting you and everything.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah. You can't go back.
I mean, if you got beaten up physically, that definitely sucks. I mean, let's be honest. That's not cool. It's just not cool.
No.
And then, you know, having your own confusing. God, what's with my language today?
I mean, how many languages do you speak?
3.
Okay, well, I only speak 1.
Yeah, but still, it's like... So, then carrying around your own confusion, you know, like, okay, something's, you know, going on here, and then why do I get beaten up for this? But it really is, there is a fine line of when you come home and you're bleeding all over or you have bruises, and I mean, just totally apart from all the emotional scars it actually brings you.
Right? I think in my case it was much more like they would steal my backpack and flush it down the toilet, or they would hawk loogies at me, you know, so it was more like spitting, stealing, name-calling, teasing. So not something where I would like, my mom would pick me up and I'd have a black eye.
No, and then she probably would have also reacted.
That would have been...
Yeah, absolutely not good. Yeah, get it.
Yeah. It was, and she is not an empathic person. So she's not someone who said, like, sweetheart, I am so sorry that's happening to you. You do not deserve that. And, you know, she's much more the kind of person who's like, yeah, kids are horrible. Childhood's hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Which can, you know, can strengthen you later, but yeah. Okay, no, but it's okay. I mean, you know, like...
But again, here we are.
Exactly.
And I think that, and my partner is a little bit more like that. He's a little bit more like, yeah, and you can deal with this. Yeah. And I'm a little bit more of the like, oh, honey, I'm so sorry that happened. What did that feel? You know, so we have a balance, and
no, we have a good, you know, you're basically enriching each other in this, and so
that's the goal. Yeah. And so maybe in retrospect, it would have been nicer if she was a little bit more empathic, but she wasn't. She did what she could with the tools she had, and I appreciate that.
When did that confusion clear off a little? When did you understand? Okay, actually, girl? No, not really.
Yeah. I mean, I think when I was about 18 or 19, I was at an event and I met a transgender man who appeared to me to be a man. And then when he spoke, had a voice that most people would traditionally think of as a woman's voice. And that, like, dissonance for me, I was just like, what? And the funny thing is that person is Micah Bazant, who is a very famous artist, who is now, you know, like world renowned and does amazing, beautiful graphic art. If I was 18, that's half my life ago. So that's 18 years ago, in Corvallis in Oregon, just at like a, you know, some kind of queer party, something. But for me, and that was, you know, he hadn't transitioned hormonally at that point. So again, a long time ago, and wasn't named Micah Bazant. Okay. And so it was a long time ago for both of us. But for me, that was like the first clearing off of some of the clouds to just say like, oh, there are other ways of being. There are other paths I could take. And that, I think, was the beginning of some self-reflection at that point. And I think that age is so hard for so many of us, 18 to 20.
Oh, yeah.
Really trying to figure out, who are we? We're not the center of the universe. There are other ways of being.
Even though we think
our parents are human beings separate and apart from being our parents. They're, you know what I mean? Like there's all kinds of things happening anyway. But, you know, it was around that time in the next couple of years that I sort of started on this new path of knowing that I'm a man and transitioning. And, and again, most people think of transition as you realize you're transgender, you come out, you change your name, you start dressing differently, you take hormones, you have surgery, you're done. And like for almost none of us is that the case. It's like a much more windy path. And it's not, you know, it's not like a set of directions you're given. It's a menu that you're given. And you kind of have to pick and choose what works for you, what's available to you, what you can afford, what feels right, like what do you want? And so I think that's one of like the most common misconceptions about transition is that it's people think that you do these things in this order and you're done. No.
I don't believe that you have a realization about something and then it just flows, because this is generally not like humans deal with, you know, like emotional realizations. It's a journey, it's a process, it's all that. So I totally get it. Yet I would like to hear a little bit more if you would like to share a little bit more about that. Because I think that is very interesting in all you people who are watching this right now. And this might be the first encounter for you with the subject of transgender. Please be open to this, because it's a beautiful thing that we learn from each other. Okay? We all have so much beautiful things to give. So I would encourage you, if this was live, you could just send me some questions, but maybe Trystan is going to answer.
I get questions all the time, so I'll try to proactively attack as many of them as possible. Yay. But I think one thing, you know, when you say like it may be new to people, I think in many cases that's true. And, you know, sometimes, you know, throughout my time as a public trans person, sometimes journalists will say, well, you know, excuse me if I ask a question that's insensitive, I'm just learning. This whole transgender thing is new. And it may be new to you, but every indigenous culture that we have any record of
course,
has not every, but many, has not just acknowledged, but celebrated people who find themselves outside of the binary spectrums. And depending on which indigenous culture you're looking at, there are dozens, if not hundreds of different ways. And we're talking about like Africa, Thailand, Indonesia, throughout the Central America, Mexico, all the native cultures of North America, both First Nations and Canada, what we now call Canada, and across what we now call America. Like, all of these cultures have had something that we would now call transgender. So again, when people are like, oh, this is just so new, and it's like,
no, and it's not new.
The idea of two genders is new.
Yeah, true.
That's the blip, you know what I mean? That's the fad. The idea that there are only two genders, that's new. Yeah. The idea of transgender or embracing the spectrum of gender identities, that's the thing that is actually traditional.
That's authentic. Yeah, that's a really good point. It's a really, really good point. And I have to admit, even my mind was going like, okay. But it's true. And yeah, I remember in many, especially in Asia, like, intersexuality was, super celebrated and worshipped, and I get that. I mean, it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
If you talk about the balance and everything,
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. It was a very beautiful insight.
That's just my little caveat. When I hear the word new, I just want to invite people to think about their experience of our culture and our gender is not universal. It's just theirs.
So
you know
good.
What I mean?
And it underlines...
It's just another story we've been told.
Yes, exactly. And it underlines so much what's put in our minds when we grow up, and then we think it's reality. This is the truth. Because this is the thing when you're a kid. This is you have the things that you question, but also you've been giving this information and you take it for like real for a while until you actually dig into it and understand.
And some people never do.
Yeah,
some people
I know.
never dig in. I work with high schools all the time. They have me come in, and then I do workshops on gender identity, gender expression. Initially, I thought I was being called in to talk about transgender issues. But what I found when I started working with teenagers is we're just talking about gender, period. There are not a lot of spaces for young girls and women to really talk about what does it mean to be a girl or a woman? What messages am I learning? What is serving me? What is not? What can I throw away?
Yes.
What can I rewrite? And what can I really embrace too? There's this one exercise I do where, and I stopped doing it because it's too provocative, but I used to do this exercise.
No, I'm excited.
Because I like to be provocative, but I got in trouble.
Yeah.
I used to, again, on purpose to be provocative, I used to have the class of teenagers, and they're like 16, 17, so they're older teenagers, line themselves up, self-selecting from most masculine and most feminine. And I make them pick where they think they are. And then we talk about it. Like, why would you put yourself here? Why would you put yourself there? How might others perceive you in the middle? What are the strengths? And then what are the challenges of being in that space? And every time I did that, there is a rush to the most masculine. And there is this hesitation around most feminine. Oh, I don't really think so. Oh, I don't know. Oh, I don't. And I'm like, why? Why? And because there is a negativity associated with femininity. People are like, okay, well, I'm feminine, but like I'm not weak. I'm not whiny. I'm not insecure. And on the opposite end, the boys, they're all just like fighting over who likes sports the most, who likes video games the most, who's the strongest, who's the tallest, etc. And I loved that exercise because it was a great way to examine like, why aren't we embracing femininity more? Why aren't
masculinity,
femininity? Why aren't we encouraging women?
Okay, yes.
Yes. Why aren't we encouraging women to be proud of who they are? And I feel like in our critiques of the traps of femininity, we have failed to teach people to be proud to be women, to be proud to be feminine, to be proud of beauty.
Oh yeah.
And artistry and even like
caring
and nurturing. Yes. People are they're So anyway, so that's why I love that exercise because I love being able to talk to them about that.
And I find that. Can I?
Yeah.
I find it especially wonderful because you are a man talking about that with your own story as a girl too.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful. So you like Yeah, well, this was my path, but that doesn't mean that I don't like femininity or something like that. And,
Yes.
and I mean, your story and that, let's say that little result.
My little baby.
Yeah. is the best example of it. It's like to embrace what we have and not to just like, okay, I don't like that about me, so I just push it away.
Well, and I've studied a lot about the ways in which our identity forms throughout our lives. And it is a natural, normal stage of our identity development to reject the norm or the mainstream. And so it's a normal, natural part of when you come out as transgender. If you're a transgender man like I am, it's a natural part of your identity or your stages to reject femininity. And we see this too, it's man-hating. If you're a lesbian, you come out as a lesbian, you reject men. It is a normal, natural stage. It's not bad. It's hard for the people around you, and hopefully you keep moving, but it's natural. That's how psychology works. You see this with gay men. They say horrible things about women's bodies. They talk about how disgusting women are. It's normal. It's natural. It sucks, and they have to keep going. They can't get stuck there. They can't get stuck there. But if they surround themselves with other people who are in that stage, they'll never move forward either.
Like with everybody else.
Yeah,
totally.
Exactly. So it is normal and natural for a transgender man to reject femininity, to even go hyper, macho, masculine, whatever. Okay. We have to have grace with people. We don't let them say negative things. We don't let them hurt other people. But we see them. We try to extend grace to them.
Oh, yeah.
And also help them find the resources they need to keep moving.
Exactly.
And I'm really lucky I've had those resources. So I went through that stage. Of course I went through that stage. But I hope now I'm in a different stage where, I'm not in that rejection place.
Oh, you're obviously in a different stage.
And I've woven that into everything else. Totally. And I now know that embracing femininity, either in myself or in other people, does not mean that I'm not really trans.
No. And that goes for everyone. I mean, you can be cisgender and whatever. It doesn't matter. Whatever gender, whatever person being you are, it is all about embracing and not about rejecting. So it's like, hey, I've been blessed to have this. Wonderful, right? And then what do I do from here with it? It's like, that's more or less it.
Yeah.
Now I have my little pick, Trystan, because that you said that about you. I personally do not support the word normal. I don't really.
I put everything in quotation marks.
I know.
You know what I mean?
There's no criticism. I just want to say that I find that my ears go like whoa when I hear that. Yeah. And I think there are some procedures that are just flowing, and that's very common. And the reason why I'm pointing this out now is only because I try to avoid it in my vocabulary. Yeah. Because I believe that, and just shortly, the source of all the labels, of all the criticism and all the judgments we have is because we use that word, normal. If that label wouldn't be there, there would just not be any comparison. And so forgive me on that.
Oh, no, totally. But it's also about our audiences.
Oh, yeah.
So for me, I spend so much time working with trans people who are stuck in their journey. They don't have support. So sometimes saying to them, like, you know what? Like, where you are is normal. Where you are is natural. Yeah. Like, you will keep moving.
Natural, I find super.
I think, and so for me, I do use it. And I know that when I use it, it is like strengthening this idea that there's normal and not normal. And like it makes people feel better. People who are struggling.
Oh God, you don't have to justify or anything. I get it. It's about, like you say, it's a language and identification. Yet I think, for example, that you say natural is something that resonates so much with me. Where I say, well, okay, so this is a natural process. This is okay.
Yeah.
It's
like, I mean, and I as a trans person, I struggle with natural. Like,
true.
Lot,
like so many perspectives. I love this.
Yeah, and also having been through a pregnancy experience, our whole obsession with natural around pregnancy, childbirth, I think is really, really, really harmful. And I think it harms women, particularly, since women are largely the people who get pregnant and have babies.
I love this. You heard right.
But we will.
If you don't know Trystan.
But we can get to that. As you know, I came out as transgender and I rejected all things feminine, and I just wanted to look like a man immediately, which is not how it works, as it turns out.
Not really.
No, it's a process. And I spent a lot of years being with people who, I really did not expect to have people treat me well. And I was not treated well. And so there was a lot of really, really hard years.
Like your friends or like your family?
Friends and lovers, and family sometimes. My parents did, my mother really struggled with me being transgender in the way that everyone, most parents do. And again, this is like, we're talking about like 2000, 2002. And so even in that period of time, our public consciousness has been heightened so much. So, so she really struggled, and she wanted me to be a part of her process. And a lot of parents of trans kids come to me now asking for help, and I say, your process is not your kid's problem. Your process is natural, how you might say it. I would say like your process is normal. Your struggles are normal, your struggles are natural, but it's not your kid's business. It's not their job to help you, so get supported through that. So you keep that to yourself. You let them go on their journey. You get your support elsewhere. And I didn't have the words to tell my mother that either. And so, she shared her struggles with me in a way that was not helpful for me, nor was it helpful for her. And so it was really hard, and I dated a lot of really mean people. They didn't know how to treat me. I didn't ask them to treat me well. And so I think between those two things, it was pretty disastrous.
So, wow, in the change of, in the process of a transition, and then also keeping your boundaries, that's tough.
Nope,
wow.
Not going to happen.
No.
Not going to happen.
I see that is...
And so insecure.
Yeah.
I mean, I was so insecure. Those few years in the beginning when I knew I was transgender, I knew I was a gay man. No gay men wanted to date me. I didn't look like a man. I didn't sound like a man. Why would they want to date me? It was just, and I had no models for transgender men who were gay. I had no idea how to do this. I didn't transition medically for a couple of years. I was worried that no doctor would believe me because I wasn't particularly masculine. I dated men. I was scared. I didn't want to be rejected. So there's just all this stuff.
That you wouldn't be believed. That's so an important piece. If you're different, and that goes really for all of us who are different and who go through a process because we abstract from what we've learned and what, should be the playbook. And then it's like, I'm scared no one will believe me. This is real for me.
Yes, and a lot of people didn't. It wasn't in my head.
Because I know that doesn't exist. Things like this.
Yes,
so like,
or they would say, like, you'll never look like a man. You'll never pass. You're not masculine enough. I mean, all of those things. I mean, yes.
How did you overcome that part?
I transitioned, and then I looked like a man, and I was like... Those same gay men who told me that they would never date me, that I would never look like a gay man, were the same gay dudes that a year later would be hitting me up on Grindr. So, yeah, I mean, I think just like barreling through was how I survived. I ended up going to performing arts school, and I transitioned actually while in school, surrounded by a really, really incredible, loving community, and that saved me.
Would you say that mentality in like around creative people actually is supportive?
Yep.
Because I feel the same completely.
Yep. Anyone who has done the work to feel secure in who they are doesn't give a shit about the things that are different about you. And whether most of the guys in my class were straight men who were stoked about me, who were excited to support me. You know what I mean? They were confident in who they were. And so that was helpful.
Wonderful.
That was helpful.
And it underlines the importance of that. Sorry, I know I'm getting...
No, that's great.
It underlines the importance of that, the people we surround ourselves with.
Yes.
So important. So important.
It is.
Get that... Find people who understand, and just, even if they don't understand, if they just embrace and support you, they don't have to know particularly everything. Just be confident that being different is fine, and there are people out there who completely support you, love you, and relate to that.
Yes.
And just find them. That's the thing that you have to do.
Yeah.
Because if you don't show yourselves, you will not be seen. Try it.
Yeah, and when I work with young people, everyone always says, like, do not give advice, because they hate it. And so whenever I work with young people, I always say, okay, I'm not going to give you any advice except one thing. Do not date mean people. Period. Don't date people who are mean to you. Like, it seems so basic.
Very simple, yeah.
But I think especially for queer people, like, we are not taught to value ourselves. And for me, I always felt like, okay, if I break up with this person, who is going to love me after this? Who else could there be? If there's already this many people who are ever going to love me, and I keep breaking up with them, or I have such a high standard that I expect them to not call me names or tell me that I'm a monster or whatever.
What?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Trystan.
Yeah.
I'm everyone who has to experience that. I'm really sorry.
Yeah. Horrible.
That's a no-go.
No. And and so that's like the one thing I say to young people is just like, don't do that. But it's the same with friends. Like, if people are mean to you, do not have them in your life. It seems so basic.
And it's hard though, because what you just described. And
it's like, so hard.
And friends especially too.
Yep.
It's like, you have somebody, you've known somebody for years and years maybe, and then you realize, okay, this is not working somehow.
Yeah.
But I don't actually want to break up with this as this friendship, but still think about it if it's good for you, because it hurts. Yeah, if you feel like you can breathe afterwards, it was definitely a good decision.
So anyway, I went to fferent art school, and then shortly after that, I met my partner Biff, who was very, very kind to me, and also not just kind, but also just didn't, really held me to a high standard in terms of who I was as a person. And so immediately I was like, great, let's do this. And we ended up...
Immediately means like, seriously, like you met him and then very shortly, wow.
Yeah. I mean, I knew right away. It took him a little bit longer.
It's okay.
It's okay. I'm patient. And when you've been with people who are... When you've been with people who are not good matches for you, who are not in good working order,
Oh, yeah. You can... The God's feeling. Oh, yeah.
And so for me, I was like, oh, this is different, and I like this. Yeah, but very, a year after we started dating, his niece and nephew came to stay with us, and then they've never gone home.
Yeah.
And
so now they're your kids.
And now they're our kids, yeah. So we wanted to grow our family, and at that point in my life, I was like 33, I guess, which is around the time when when a lot of queer people start having kids. And I had known that it was possible for transgender men to conceive and carry healthy pregnancies. I have one friend who, as far as I know, is probably the first trans pregnancy, and his son is now 20. So that's a long time ago. That's 20 years this has been happening. And now there's a wealth of medical research on this topic showing that if you stop taking your testosterone, you wait for your cycles to come back, the uterus is really, really resilient. And
wow, that's
yeah. But I mean, if you think about it, I know, right?
Yeah, somehow yes, right?
Yeah. But you think there's a lot of hormonal birth control that stops ovulation. Testosterone is the same thing, and testosterone, it's just a totally different system than your uterus, eggs, etc. It doesn't touch it. So if you stop taking your testosterone, your uterus wakes up from hibernation and kicks out some eggs, and all the evidence shows that pregnancy, childbirth, and postpartum outcomes are exactly the same as for someone who wasn't on testosterone. So I knew it was medically advisable. I knew it was possible because I, at that point, had many friends who were going through it, and I started getting baby fever. And actually, when I first met Biff, I used to have dreams of having us having a baby, and they were very clear. It was like I knew what that baby looked like. I had the vision, but I didn't tell him because that's too much. You know what I mean? Especially since I'm much more much more of the intuitive type, and he's much more of a practical type. So I couldn't be like, let's have a baby, because the baby came to me in a dream and said that she wanted to be born. That's weird. So I didn't do that. And then we had his niece and nephew came to live with us, and so there was too much going on.
I didn't find that weird, by the way.
I figured that you wouldn't, but I knew that he would. So
yeah, I get that.
And so I knew that it was happening, and I just spent a lot of time researching it, and And I really started to think about it not just as something that was like a means to an end. Like, this is how we can grow a family. We happen to have, he has sperm, I have eggs, let's do this. Not just as a practicality, but also as a way for me of embracing the thing that makes me different.
Could you just say that to them? Could you just repeat that again, please? That's beautiful.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think to expound on it a little bit more,
Okay.
I think a lot of the messages that I've received as someone who is unique and different is that, like, I'll be accepted and loved as long as I don't ever remind people that I am different from them. And so for me as a transgender person, having a baby was a way of rejecting that. It was a way of embracing this thing that makes me different. You know what? I'll never be like other men. I'm not like other men. I don't want to be like other men.
Yes, exactly.
I happen to be a man who can do this really amazing thing, and that is create life.
Wow, it's a gift.
It's a gift. It is a gift. And in my case, it was a literal gift, which was a baby.
Yeah.
And so it was a way of really moving past that stage of rejecting being different and rejecting femininity, and really being able to say, you know what, like, I can really embrace what makes me different, and rebel against this idea that I should have to be like other men
playbook.
in order to be accepted. And so it was a way of being able to embrace and accept my body in a really radical way, and to rebel against the playbook that says men don't have babies, only women have babies. Okay, fine, you can be transgender, but you have to act like other men. Never challenge masculinity. And for me, I'm just like, no thanks. At the time, I really felt that people were ready. That we had this idea of transgender people, that transgender people hate their bodies, that they just want to be, transgender men just want to be men, and not be different. And for me, I was just sort of like, okay, that's true for a lot of transgender men, totally, but not all of us. And I think that it's not that narrative is bad. It's right for a lot of people, but I think we're ready for some more nuance.
Yes, I believe so too.
It's the same thing around gayness, queerness. Yeah. There was for a long time this idea that, like, no, I'm just like everyone else. I just happen to be gay. Yeah. And I'm like, that's true for some people, but, like, for most of us, it's not.
No.
The way that we get to see things as different is a gift. And, like, I'm not interested in giving that up so that a couple people like me more. No. That's not acceptance. God bless the people who are queer, who do feel like they are like everyone else. They just happen to be gay. Good for them. They're our community too. But they're not everyone.
No.
And we shouldn't have to pretend to be like them.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm sorry. No, totally. No, and again, it's like, why is it about against? Why is it not with each other? It's like, so it just happened to me. Okay, fair enough. That's beautiful. It came naturally. So, but for others, it came naturally, but with a lot of challenges. And we have to look at the time period again. I find this is very important. The simple example is being a vegetarian. You made your choice 25 years ago. I made my choice 25 years ago.
In the 90s.
Right? How tough was that back then? And now it's just like...
There was nowhere I could eat. There was one Thai restaurant.
Yeah.
One Thai restaurant. If I had a summer party at a friend's house, they'd be like, oh.
Uh-huh. You can eat the potatoes.
Here's the salad. Yeah, potatoes without gravy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're like
that.
Cool, French fries again. Yeah. Yay, but not at restaurants because they use like chicken fat in the French fries.
So
yes, disaster. So, but you're right, now you can eat anywhere.
Everywhere. And it's like the generation that is like, basically the teenagers nowadays, loads of them are vegetarians.
So different.
And it's like, and that's the same, I know this is just a simple example, but this is what it is.
And
for
in
us,
20 years.
It was a challenge back then.
Huge.
It was like challenging. And now, some of you might just look at them, oh, well, what's a big deal? You're
big
gay.
Deal vegetarian.
You're vegetarian. Well, it was. And it's the same with everything. Like, everything that people stand up for and fighting for the rights. We have to thank them, seriously, because they paved the path. Yeah. And now,
It doesn't happen by magic.
No, it
People
doesn't.
think that progress happens, like, again, naturally. It doesn't. Like, it is a hard fight.
It is.
And you do have to give honor and respect to the people who paved that path. And I think the same thing is true for trans pregnancy.
Exactly.
People out there on the front lines now, as trans people, continuing to challenge gender norms, I think are doing the hard work
absolutely.
that our community needs.
Like you, it's like, and that's so wonderful, like you said. But it's so beautifully positive how you look at it. I mean, how you phrase it. I know it was it was
horrible.
Okay, it was horrible. I want to hear more about it. But you were with your result right now, with your gift, like you have your baby, and you say no. This is good. We have to good new aspects in it, like develop more, and it takes people to stand up, and you're one of them, and it's wonderful that you're doing this. So
yeah,
I want to hear the horrible story anyway, because it's important to hear all of the story and not just the beautiful shiny bits.
I still have people ask me. Well, I'll say, we decided to tell our story publicly primarily because of the privileges that we have. Mm-hmm. We live in Portland. Other than the fact that I was pregnant and had a baby, we look like every other gay white couple in America, basically, just at our face value. You know what I mean?
Get it.
And so for us, we knew that there's both a measure of palatability. That would mean that a lot of people who wouldn't otherwise be able to understand something like trans pregnancy would be able to see us and we feel familiar to them. You know what I mean? Like they were on the debate team with someone like Biff in high school. Mm-hmm. They did theater with someone like me in college. You know what I mean? There's something, we're like archetypes.
Yeah,
we knew that we're familiar. And we knew that a lot of people in America would see us on the news, and it would be challenging that there's like a trans pregnancy, but there's also an accessibility and a familiarity about us. So strategically, we're like, it's a good time and place, and we're the right messenger for some people around this issue. But also because of our privileges, we felt like we felt a responsibility to stand up and take the heat because so many other queer people cannot. They're not safe enough. They don't have family support. Yeah. They don't live in a city like Portland, where for all of the blowback we got, we had this protective bubble, which was our family, which is critical. His parents were supportive. My parents were supportive. Our community of other queer people in Portland, our Portland community.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We had all these layers of protection. Yeah. And then we had all of the social protections of being white, of being middle class, of having jobs and financial security. Mm-hmm. Other people don't have those things. And so we felt like it wasn't just something that we could choose to do, but it was really something that we felt obligated to do. So
you've got my total respect for this, and my total gratitude, because seriously, what you just described is so wonderful to hear from a being, to say, hey, let's face it, we're privileged. We can do this. If not us,
who? Literally who?
And that's great. That's really great.
I don't have anyone else in my life who I think has an easier path as a transgender person than me. I'm not viewed as transgender when I go out in the world. People don't, you know what I mean? And look at the other trans people right now who are famous. Janet Mock, Laverne Cox, Geneset Gutierrez, Gina Rosero. These are trans women of color out there doing the most, taking all the heat, having such a hard time of it. If someone like me isn't willing to go out there and put myself out there in a similar way, what are we even doing as a community? We don't deserve liberation if someone like me isn't willing to put themselves out there and join that fight of trying to make the world a better goddamn place for people who are different. You know what I mean? If not us, then what was Stonewall even for? You know what I mean? What if people who...
Well, still it's an individual decision, because you still could have said, no, it's too much for me or whatever. And,
of course,
it's like...
Of course.
And so it's wonderful you as a family. I mean, you have 2 kids already. Mm-hmm. And, let's talk about that too. Yeah. Because it's not, it's like, it's just us 2. No. The grown-ups. No, it's like...
And we talk to them and we engage them in the process. Yeah, so... so anyway, we just decided we are going to tell our story publicly. We had no idea how big it would be. None.
No, of course.
None. People care a lot about gender being the way it is right now. It takes a village to uphold the gender binary.
It's really...
this tapped into so many bedrock principles of our culture that, I mean, we literally went from being like nobodies to being on the cover of like CNN, Washington Post, People Magazine, Cosmo Magazine, Yahoo News. I don't know who still reads Yahoo News, but my mom sent it to me. I mean, we were like, every mainstream news outlet was covering our story. And the blowback, like I like live in a world of rainbows and unicorns. And I knew that transphobia was real here, but like until I felt like people hate us, I just had people hate us and wish that we were dead. And I just had no idea. And like the hundreds of messages I got, calling me, one dude just messaged me to tell me that I was a cancer. That's it. There are some of them that just really stick with you. And that was one, and like, people would tell me like they hoped that I gave birth to a dead baby.
Oh, God. What?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Because a dead baby would be better off than a baby that had to be born to someone like me.
Oh, my gosh. I cannot believe humans.
Hundreds of those. Hundreds.
Oh, my God. That is so shocking.
Horrible.
Yep. That is just... I'm sorry that the other one really touched me already, but this one is, for me, is like, how?
How could you say that to anyone who's pregnant?
No, and for the baby too, it's like how, it's like there's life. It's life.
Yeah. And a lot of people saying that they were religious. Oh. And I'm like, you are a religious person who's like literally wishing that a baby dies.
Oh my gosh.
Horrible, horrible, horrible. Yeah. And it was just like, it was just impossibly hard, and you just keep going like everything else. You just keep...
How did you manage
going.
to? I mean, you were pregnant, so you're not stopping that process,
right?
So, but did you not just sit here and just have wondered at points to just say, well, we can't deal with this anymore, or
like a million times? But it is that thing where it's like, because of the internet, you open the door. And then you can't go That's back. It. And then it becomes, the question for us is like, okay, well, are we then just going to let the Daily Mail write about our story over and over again? Or when CNN and the Washington Post reach out to us and they say, we'll moderate the comments, we'll let you approve all the talking points, we'll talk to GLAAD, the media, the LGBT media organization, to make sure that all of our messaging is on point. Will you partner with us to tell the story? Yeah. Those are your choices at that point.
And then you feel probably a bit motivated again.
That's right. And so we made that choice to say, okay, we're going to do this as responsibly as possible. So I did a lot of research on transphobia and on anti-transphobic bias. I worked with GLAAD. They have a whole trans messaging person. And so every interview I did, I would send him the interview, either video or article, whatever, and I'd say, okay, Nick, how'd I do? What did I miss? What did I forget? How can I change things? And he would write back, or we'd go on the phone and he would say, okay, you can't say it this way. You got to do this instead. You have to point to this research. You have to talk about a doctor. And he would tell me, and I would take notes. And then my next interview, I would just do all the new talking points, so that every interview is better. You know what I mean? Because it's a responsibility. Like, I can't mess it up, because whatever I do wrong, it gives that much more fodder to transphobic people. It makes it that much harder for the next person who's trans to come along and try to do this. So I wanted to do it the right way. And I have to say, like, as awful as the comments were that we were getting, that I was getting, the feedback from other queer people was so positive. And for me, that was the thing I was most afraid of. I was most afraid that other queer people, especially trans people, would come for me.
Your community.
Yeah. And we're in such a culture of critique anyway. We're in, like, we call it cancel culture. You know what I mean? Where it's like if someone does one thing wrong, they're like, oh, you're canceled. And that's it, you're out. Yeah, totally. And I thought so many other trans people would be like, listen, don't do this. Like, you're making it harder. You're confusing people. We've already convinced people that we're just like them. And instead it was like the complete opposite. All these trans people were like they were just like, thank you. Like, thank you for showing that there's a million ways to be trans. You are making it easier for us. You're making it easier for people to understand that we are different and that is okay. And that was, for me, that was like, okay, because I don't think I could have dealt with that.
No, because that's
straight people, who cares what they have to say? But my people, like, that's who I'm here for. That's who I'm doing this for. Yeah. Exactly. Even though my audience is not queer people, my audience is straight people. Because, other queer people are like, yeah, big deal, you're a man who had a baby. Most LGBT people know Emmanuel.
Yeah. True.
So they're not my audience.
Yeah.
Mainstream America is my audience. And so that's sort of like who I'm here for them, to tell my story to them. And you'll notice like I don't say the word cisgender. Straight people don't know what that means. I don't say like heteronormative or transphobia. They don't know what those words mean. So I always say like I'm transgender, and that means that and I don't even say assigned female at birth, even though I'm supposed to. People don't know what that means. It's confusing. So anyway, yeah.
No, it's and you're making a real effort. So you are making a difference. You are actually making a difference in the world, and it is driving you somehow. Why?
I hope.
Why is it so important to you to make that difference? I mean, you've explained all this now. I just want to ask you this pinpointed.
Shit is fucked up. The world is full of horrors for trans people. It really is. Like, shit is fucked up. And the better things seem to get, like, the better they don't get for trans people.
What's that? What do you mean by that? What exactly?
Give me an example. We have not seen the murder rate of trans women in America drop in 20 years. We have not even put a dent in... We haven't put a dent in trans murders. Trans people are still the most likely to lose their lives as a result of hate crime of any other demographic in America. Any others.
That is just impossible.
Yep. We haven't put a dent in trans poverty, trans employment. We haven't put a dent in trans suicidality, drug use, incarceration. None of it. None of it. Haven't even touched it since we've started measuring any of these things, more than 20 years. So for me, it's like, if I can make using my skills and using my tools, if I can make the tiniest dent in it, then it's like, okay, then I can like die and feel like I did something. Yeah. And that's just like, that's what just keeps barreling me forward. And once you start to have kids too, it's like once you build a family, it's just like, what am I teaching them? What am I showing them is possible with this little snippet of time that we have? And what kind of a world are we leaving behind? Yeah. And I think about it just in terms of like, how much work do I want my kids to have to do to make the world a better place?
That's true. There's always something to do, but yes.
I want to move the needle forward a little bit so that way they can, that's the legacy I give them, so that they can pick up whatever they want to do. So,
talking about your kids.
Yeah.
You were telling me before that you were involving your kids into that process of having a baby.
Yeah,
How was that? What did you do?
Yeah, well, in terms of actually like deciding to get pregnant and have a baby, that was not up to them. They don't get a say in that. That's between me and Biff.
Sure.
And then when it came time to tell our story publicly, we're going to tell our story publicly. How much do you guys want to be involved in that process? It will mean that people will know that you have a transgender dad. It will mean that people know that your transgender dad is going to have a baby. How do you want us to deal with that in terms of your life? And my daughter really wanted to be involved, but we did not let her give interviews. We don't let either of our kids give interviews. They are too young for that. And that, because of the internet, that will last the whole rest of their lives. But just like being in the room, having their pictures taken. And my son, we let him opt in or out. And sometimes he would not want to be involved. Okay, that's fine.
Fair enough, absolutely.
Yeah. And he made very specific requests of us that we totally honored.
That's good that he can pinpoint it down also.
Yep.
They can actually, say that,
Yeah. And we've learned, we've done a lot of work with other children of LGBT parents to ask them, what do you wish your parents had done? How do we empower our kids? And that's what they said is like, let them tell their own stories. And don't just like...
No, please. Exactly.
Rope them in.
Yeah.
And my daughter especially really sees herself as a leader and wants to be more of a leader. So when I go and do public speaking, if I'm able to, I bring her with me. And if I'm able to, she likes to share a few words as well.
Lovely.
And, no audience member minds letting an 8-year-old talk on the microphone for 2 minutes to tell her story. People are fine with that. And it makes a big difference in her feeling confident.
And it makes a difference to the world too, again.
Yeah.
Because, perceiving... And that they are fine off, and that you're, that she's totally with you guys, and that she hasn't taking any damage on it and all these other stupid ideas.
Yeah, and it is, and that's, that is a challenging.
She's a confident human being.
Yeah, but that's actually what we hear from other children of LGBT parents is also, like, you also have to let your kid have challenges. And it's hard because you do want to, like, be like, look, my kids are normal. Look, we're happy. You want to do that to go against those stereotypes. But even by like fighting those stereotypes, you're giving those stereotypes power.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Every child has challenges. Come on.
That's right. That's right. Totally.
So
yes.
it really is.
It is.
It's just a matter of the spot or something. But it's like, where do you pick? It's like, but every child has that.
Yeah, so. But she's like super confident. Beautiful. She and I are very, very close. We're very connected.
I reckon that somehow.
Yeah. She's really lovely. She's also as like emotionally open as I am, and so I really like that too. We went to Seattle this weekend, and on the way up, I played a song for her that I really love, and she started crying, and then I started crying. So we're connected in that way. You know what I mean? We both have big feelings. But yeah, we tried to engage them as much in the process as they wanted. So yeah.
And how's Biff feeling about it now? How is he? How is he with the decision? How was the journey for him? Just maybe you want to share that a little bit.
Yeah.
If he's okay with that.
Yeah. What's funny is I grew up in a really supportive household and he didn't. Mm-hmm. And ironically, it was easier for him to go through this process than it was for me because I had further to fall. Mm-hmm. Because when you've had a supportive family, even though my parents struggled with being trans, still at the core of that was always unconditional love and acceptance. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think that I really knew how profound the level of hatred of trans people, of gay people is. Mm-hmm. And Biff grew up in a Pentecostal household. He knows. Mm-hmm. He always knew. And so when we started getting these negative comments, it hit me so hard. Mm-hmm. And I think, not that he was callous or anything, but in his mind, he was sort of like, what did you think was going to happen?
Mm-hmm. He was expecting it.
Yes. He's like, how did you think this was going to go? Yes, this is what we agreed to when we knew we were going to go public. And I was like, I did not think that I was agreeing to this. So for him, it was hard, but it was still not as hard, both because I was pregnant and also because he already knew.
And he could hold you steady, right? He could be with you. So
yeah.
Because he was prepared differently to this.
Yeah. So it just didn't hit him in the same way. Mm-hmm. And we really called in the troops. Like, we called in on our community, on our non-trans friends, and they took over our whole internet presence and really just like protected us and blocked for us. And Biff did that as much as he could, mostly with the pregnancy and doctors and all that stuff. Then our community did that on this sort of like public scale, which was really, it was just really, really, we're just really, really, really grateful to our community for doing that. And now he really he's the frontline parent. Like, his job is our family, is like keeping our house running and keeping the kids happy and decorating it and providing us, with the things that not just like meet our needs, but also like make our lives worth living. Mm-hmm. And then I do all the like public facing activism, speaking engagements, interviews, all of that. Mm-hmm. And so and like my second job is our relationship. Like that's my primary focus in the family. His is the kids and the household. He's like our CEO in that way. Mm-hmm. And then my job is like us. Uh-huh. So like it's my job to make sure that like we have date nights. Yes. It's my job to make sure that if he's at capacity, like I tap in. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Whatever he hates doing, I do it. Mm-hmm. Like, it's my job to make sure we stay intimately connected. Mm-hmm. And that has ended up working out pretty well for us.
Sounds pretty sound.
Yeah, like, that's our sort of like... We know
our
jobs.
You're a team.
Yeah, so anyway, so that's our story. And now Leo is 20 months old.
Yeah. I mean, we want to meet this little guy.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, you met a very sleepy little guy, but he's just everything. Ever since he was born, I'm just like, oh my God. Being public, I still don't know. Like, people ask me, oh, was it worth it? Or like, would you do it again? Or do you have any regrets? And I don't do regrets. But I still don't know. You know what I mean? Because so much vitriol was stirred up by the story, both for myself, the toll that it took on me, and I think that some of the best parts of me died throughout the process.
Really?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I don't think anything can die in you.
I'm glad to hear you say that.
Because we're all pure. That's what I'm saying about kids.
Yeah.
We are so pure in everything. But that is not gone. And it still believes that. the only thing that stands beside it. And that's what I mean by it's not replacing it. I don't believe it's replacing it. It's just something coming, it's like added to it. That also says, well, this is, you can still trust this and go for this.
It's an and, it's not a but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that will allow you and everyone out there to tap into that again and again.
Yeah.
And yeah, it does change. Like you say, we have scars, and then, like I said before, emotional scars, and they are there. Yet a scar, if you look at it, can be a reminder of something that is actually, that it's worth something, that there is beauty, that there's always hope, because you made it here.
Sure. Yeah.
So, look, I'm not Buddha, I'm not whatever. I just know that that's the force and the energy that brought you here. And that makes you all these things. And you were doing what you were dreaming of. Maybe not exactly in the way.
Totally, sure.
But you're doing it.
Yeah.
You are.
Yeah.
And the people who teach you that there's this other side to the story, you influence them by doing what you do anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't make it. Gee. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for, welcoming me here, taking your time, sharing your story once more.
Of course. Yeah.
And I promise you I will do whatever I can to support this. And not just by, this show, but you can count me in. Whatever you need, I hope I can help you. However your sweet spot needs.
Thanks.
No worries. Let me just ask you 2 final questions.
Sure.
What's the one thing what's the one thing you want to say to people who are different out there? The one thing. What's that?
I mean, it's the thing that...
Could you tell them to please?
Sure, yeah. If people are familiar with Lena Waithe, and she's a Black queer actress, she won a major award on some major award show, and she said, the things that make you different make you powerful. And I just think that, I want to give her credit for saying that so perfectly. And we say it so many ways and we hear it so many ways, but I'll just say it again. The things that make us different make us powerful. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you.
Sure.
And now, the last and final question would be, this goes without hierarchy. So naming the first 3 people that come to your mind who have influenced you in your life and why. There's no hierarchy, just the first 3. It doesn't matter.
I mean, for me, the first is my partner.
Okay.
And, often we're told, you can't love somebody else unless you love yourself. I don't believe that. I think sometimes by loving somebody else, you can learn to love yourself.
I believe that too, yes.
Yeah. And so for me, being in the presence of someone that has the capacity for unconditional love and who does not have conditions or hierarchies on that, I think has been profoundly transformational for me, especially as a trans person, to have someone love me exactly as I show up in the world and not expect me to change or be any different than how I am. I think that's just completely shifted my own view of myself. I mean, I think that, my mom is definitely my hero. She's not a kind person. I mean, she's not a nice person, I'll say that. She's not warm. She doesn't hug. She never says, I love you. That's just not her thing. But she is profoundly selfless, profoundly generous. I was always surrounded by not just me and my biological siblings, but a bevy of other young people who just needed a home, who just needed parents. And so when Haley and Riley showed up in our lives, I was like, oh yeah, this is just what you do. It was natural to me. And so I think to see someone who's that generous, who's that selfless in her own way, I think, is just huge for me.
And she says, I love you in her own
in
language.
Her own way. And I think both she and Biff have taught me that you can't, in a relationship, romantic, family, friend, you can't expect people to show you the love in the way you want. You look at the ways they're showing you love and you see that as love. It's the love languages thing, But what sometimes gets lost is it's not just you telling people this is my love language.
Oh, I had to learn that. Woohoo.
It's, I wish my mom told me that she loved me more often. But holy crap, does she show me that she loves me all the time. Oh my God, the third person who's really influenced me. I do have to think for a second.
It's randomly. There's no hierarchy.
Yeah.
Who comes up? Bam.
I mean, the very first thing that comes up is my kids.
Cool.
And I told you that like my daughter and I had like an emotional moment on the drive up on Friday to Seattle. And I think it was a friend of mine singing doing a cover of the Dolly Parton song "Wildflowers," which is really about leaving. It's about being placed somewhere and then going somewhere else and thriving. And so these two kids were taken from their home when they were little, and they've both in their own ways found a way to thrive. You know what I mean? They are resilient. They found a way to survive. And to me, I'm just like, that's heroic, especially for kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially for how little they are. Leo will have such an easier life than them. And so, yeah, I think that that's Haley and Riley are the other people that I think really influenced me. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing that.
Sure.
All of it.
Yeah.
It was beautiful talking to you.
Thanks for joining me.
No, that's my pleasure. That's definitely my pleasure.
Cool.
Oh, wow, wonderful. Thank you. Can I give you a hug?
Of course.
Is that okay?
Yes. It has to be gentle, though. Just a shoulder hug.
Yes.
My boobs.
There it goes.
The other day, I was hanging out with Haley, and she gave me a hug. I was like, watch my boob. And she's like, Dad, you don't have boobs anymore. I was like, you're right. I can't say that anymore, can I?
All right, people. How amazing was this story? It really touched me so deeply. And I cannot believe how many challenges he's being had to overcome. And how wonderful and selfless he stands up with his whole family to set aside. Okay, so we are now going for a walk because we need some connection with nature now. You please subscribe to this channel so you can listen to and watch some more of these unbelievable real stories. They are real, they're different, they're uplifting, they're inspiring. Go for it and grab your gift on my website www.different.coach or www.miavonloga.com. Okay, woo! Let's see the rest of Portland now. Have a wonderful day. Bye. Come on, Sverte.